Hi, everybody. Big warm welcome from me as well. Great that you can be here. We're going to crack straight on. There is opportunity to ask questions in the Q&A box. We'll try and respond to them as we go along with a written answer, or we'll respond at the end and so on. But I'm just going to kick off really by just talking a bit about what makes Norland a little bit different, not just because we're 133 years old, so we're one of the older institutions, and that we are pioneering in every way. Our founder, Emily Ward, literally created the childcare profession. She was the first person to set up a training establishment to train people to look after young children in the home. And they used to be called nursery nurses back in the day. So it was pioneering, but we have updated the curriculum since then. So we remain cutting edge, and you're going to hear in a moment all about the incredible course that we put on. So we are the equivalent of a university. So we're called Norland College, but we have what's called degree awarding powers. We've been assessed by the powers that be, and we have full degree awarding powers. So we are just like a university. And in fact, we are hoping in the very near future, we will acquire university title. So we will actually be called Norland University of Early Childhood, the first specialist early years university in the world, I might add. So again, pioneering in that way. We'll talk a little bit about the actual course in a moment, so I won't get into that at this point, but we are small and specialist with a very good student-teacher ratio, the kind of ratio you would see at Oxford or Cambridge, by the way, and so on. And yes, we have a uniform. So this was set up by our founder. Obviously, we have updated the uniform. We now have a gender-neutral uniform, for example. So you don't have to, you can choose to wear the dress or trousers, whichever you prefer. You can see in the picture our formal uniform, which you wear for degree lectures. And then we have a practical placement uniform, which you'll see in other images for when you do practical skills, cooking, sewing, you'll hear all about that. And when you go out on placement, you'll hear about that too. So why do we still have the uniform? And I see there was a question there about that. To be honest, nowadays, most families don't require their nannies to wear the uniform. They used to in the old days, but not so much anymore because you're so visible. And we have, asked students and got the student voice on this on many occasions. And one of the reasons students come to Norland is because they want to wear the uniform. They feel proud. They know that it sets them apart. It helps to sort of develop that sense of professional identity and really gives them a sense of belonging to an institution that is world-renowned, prestigious, and is the very best place to train and be educated in early childhood education and care. So a lot of our students embrace wearing it. I'll let our students answer in the chat if they want to or later what it's like wearing it. But I'm afraid it is still compulsory. So that makes us a little bit different from a typical university. But we always figure it's great because you don't have to worry about what you're going to wear the next day and you save on clothes, maybe, and so on. So yeah, we wear the uniform. We also have a professional code. That's nothing weird and cultish. That's lots of professions have professional codes. Midwives, for example, have it. And so it goes on. And that's really about being the kind of person you want young children to become. So it's about being that role model. It's about being inclusive. It's about being empathic. It's about being caring. It's about role modeling, all those sort of attributes and values and behaviors that we would want to instill in young children so that they could be a part of a positive and inclusive and fair and just society. So that code is something we do expect you to abide by, and so on. But again, it's nothing odd. It's pretty straightforward stuff that you would find amongst most professional roles and so on. And we're a little bit different because we've got our own employment agency. So you'll hear a bit more about that when we talk about career opportunities, which we'll cover. So thank you, Becky. On to the next slide. Becky is the vice principal you'll hear from in a moment. So I'm not going to spend long on this because you're going to hear all about this, but we just wanted to flag up that we offer what's known as what we call the golden triangle. So ours is very much a theoretical, but also practical and practical experience course. So we have this wonderful golden triangle of theory, knowledge, research, practical skills, putting theory and skills into practice in placement. So a third of the course is the degree, a third of the course is the Norland diploma. And that's something else I ought to have mentioned just now that sets us apart, that makes us a little bit different. We do 2 courses. That's a really important message for you all in terms of workload. It's all manageable though, and you'll perhaps hear that from the students. It's a manageable workload, but it is more than you would be doing at a typical university because you're doing a full degree and you're doing all the practical skills. So you do have more contact time. You do spend more time on campus. It does make it a bit more tricky. You know, you can't sort of turn up when you feel like. We do monitor attendance. It's a bit like being back at school, but this is all very important because we need to make sure that you are going to be the very best you can be because you're going to be doing the most important job in the world, which is working with young children. So more of that as we go along. So from that point of view, there are some expectations from you, but hopefully you'll hear also what an incredibly rich value-added course it is, full of all sorts of opportunities, and going on to have a really well-paid and fulfilling career doing the most important job in the world, as we said. So that golden triangle is very important because you'll get that kind of really holistic learning experience and so on. Thank you, Becky. So just to reassure you as well, bit of showing off time here over the next couple of slides. We're not just the only ones saying we're great and the best in the world for childcare and education provision. Thankfully, the government thinks so too. So you may know about this. This is the Teaching Excellence and Graduate Outcomes Framework, as it's called, TEF for short. This is the 3rd time we've been awarded this. You have it for about 4 to 5 years. It's a bit like Ofsted, where you get assessed if you're outstanding or not. Only 12% of universities in this country have TEF Gold, and we're one of them. So this is reassuring for you to know that we're not saying we're the best. The government thinks we're in the top hierarchy of provision in terms of quality provision. So that's reassuring for you, I'm sure. Next one, thank you, Becky. And then just to also reassure you, this is what our students say about us as well. So we always score very well on the National Student Survey. This is a survey that you will do in your 3rd year. All university students do it. And we do very well. So you can hear from our own students saying that the quality of our provision, the student experience, is well above the sector average. And many things, we get sort of 90+% for many things. So that's also hopefully reassuring that because it's our students themselves, and it's an anonymous survey as well, so you can speak freely. And we always do get amazing feedback for the most part from our students. So there we go. So that's also reassuring, I hope. And then finally, extra bit of showing off on the next slide. We have other awards. We have many other awards. You could read them for yourself. The one we particularly like is, I'll mention a couple, but it's the Graduate Outcomes Award that we got a few years ago. And what we love about this one is that this was not voted for by our students. Often the What Uni ones, the ones in the middle, are voted for by our students. But the one on the right in the middle, the Graduate Outcomes one, was voted for by students at other universities. So they didn't think their own university had the best graduate outcomes. They thought we did the best. And it wasn't just the outcomes, it was what we did to prepare you for employment, because that's another value added sort of what makes us a bit different. 2 courses, all the other things I've already discussed, and you really get supported to your transition into employment. In fact, we put you in your first job. More of that later. But the one I do want to also mention is the top one there. The Times Higher Education Awards are known as the Oscars of higher education. So if you work in higher education or your university, you want to get one of these awards. And we're competing with lots of other universities with this. And one of the awards is Specialist Institution of the Year. And we came second. We just got pipped at the post, but we did get a highly commended. This has literally happened last week. So this is a fresh new award just received. And we're very proud because it says basically, in effect, we're the second best one in the whole country, the whole of the UK, that is. Next time it will be the first. So we'll try again. But anyway, there you go. So I hope that's reassuring for you, that it's not just us blowing our own trumpet here, that you really will get an incredibly prestigious and quality and world-renowned experience here at Norland. That's it for me for now. Over to Becky.
Hello everyone, thank you Janet. So yes, I'm one of the vice principals. It's really lovely to be here this evening, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our degree and diploma, and give you some detail really, so that you get a good flavour of what it's like to study at Norland. We like to call our degree a degree with a difference, and that's because very much like any early childhood studies degree, you'll be exploring all of the very, very key themes that you need to know about, and such as how children develop and learn, what their well-being and health is. You'll explore diversity and inclusion. You'll think about your own professional development. And then you'll also get a really good opportunity over the 3 years of study to explore all of the sort of key themes that you need to know about in terms of early childhood education and care from different perspectives. So we'll introduce you to the psychological perspective, we'll take you through neuroscience. In fact, we've got a bit of a taster for you this evening with Janet on some neuroscientific perspectives on early childhood. We will give you philosophical perspectives on early childhood and talk you all the way through the social sciences and education perspectives as well. So over the course of the degree, you get a really full and rounded perspective on what it means to really care for young children and support their development and their education over that birth to 8 age phase. But we particularly focus in on some core modules, and you can see those in front of you there on the screen. And I just want to draw attention to a couple of them that are really unique to Norland. So one of them there is called Supporting Children to Regulate Behaviour. And we think that that's a golden thread, in fact, running all the way through the degree. You study a module every year focused on children's regulating behaviour, and also what it means to co-regulate with young children. We have a whole module focused on the baby years as well, which is quite unusual for an early childhood studies degree. So you get that opportunity to really hone your understanding about all of the kind of core theoretical underpinnings that we now know that are so vital for those baby years, so that you're in a best position to be able to care and support young children. And then you'll also have the opportunity to do a really applied project as part of your dissertation at the end of your 3rd year. So that means you'll get to work in practice and collect data and explore an area that's been really important to you over the 3 years of study. And then alongside that, you'll also have a value-added curriculum, the opportunity to really learn with a specialist lecturing team, as well as guest speakers that we bring in right across the globe in terms of their perspectives. So you get a very cutting-edge, research-informed curriculum experience while you're doing your degree at Norland. And then another key thing that supports the uniqueness of a degree is the variety of placements that you'll do. So in fact, you'll spend over a third of your degree doing placements, and you will be in a school setting or a nursery and preschool settings. You'll get the opportunities to go into special educational needs and disabilities settings if that's an area you're interested in. You'll get very unique newborn experiences, as well as hospital maternity or paediatric experiences, which are really, really special. We have a good relationship with our local hospital, and not all early childhood studies degrees would give you that really unique opportunity to be placed in hospital. But really, typically at Norland, the majority of the placements are made up in the family home, because that's likely to be where you end up in the majority of your careers, working with families, supporting young children's care and development. So we make sure over that 3 years of study that you get lots of different opportunities across birth to 8 years, but also in different contexts. You get to know how children are in different settings. And then whilst you're doing your placements, you'll also be gathering something called early childhood graduate practitioner competencies. And they're an excellent way that you can demonstrate that you've got a high level of practice skill as well as the knowledge. So you remember Janet was showing you that golden triangle, and the degree gives you all of that theoretical knowledge, but it also gives you the opportunity to develop this practice competency as well. So we'll guide you through your placements and give you the opportunity to demonstrate those skills as you develop and grow across the course. And then alongside your degree, you'll also be studying a diploma, because it's 2 courses when you come to Norland, so really intense experience, but it's nicely balanced because you're doing the theoretical and the placement, and then you're getting the opportunity all the time to apply that theory into practice. So you'll have across your diploma study something called professional and care skills, and what that gives you the opportunity to do is really put into practice everything you're learning about, for instance, with young babies, so how to bathe them, how to feed them, how to support best practice with sleep, how to fit car seats, how to bottle feed, how to do everything you particularly might need to do around practical care skills. And then we give you opportunities to put into practice as well some of the theories around play that you'll be learning about on your degree. So you'll really delve into opportunities to put together activities that you can then take into your placement and into employment later on. So all the time having good opportunity to make links between theory and practice. And then alongside that, you do a food and nutrition curriculum, and you'll learn about optimal nutrition for young children. In fact, you'll learn about children's food preferences, you'll learn about global cuisine, you'll learn about how to cater for children as they're growing through the different phases, so weaning, for instance, right up to kind of creating meals for children and perhaps even for the family as well. And then we have a sewing curriculum, which is part of the original Norland curriculum, and we've maintained that. Our students love the sewing. Well, certainly the ones that I've talked to about their experiences, they really enjoy that opportunity to go in and to be able to kind of have an embodied experience and do something very different to the degree, which is focused on kind of using your kind of mind. So it's a very minds-on and hands-on experience at Norland. The diploma also gives you really excellent opportunities for employment training and a newly qualified nanny year, which I'm going to tell you about in a moment. But just before I do, we thought it would be really lovely for you to have a snapshot of some of the beautiful artifacts that our students have sewn, and also some of the amazing food that they have created for young children alongside their studies. So once you get to the end of your diploma and your degree, you will go into a transition phase, which helps you to move into employment, because the last year of your diploma is a newly qualified nanny year. So the employment preparations happens right at the end of your 3rd year. And what that does is it gives you the opportunity to get a CV together, to really hone interview techniques, to think about what it means to be professionally communicating in a family, to really refine skills and knowledge that you've been gaining across the degree. So we make sure that we weave these employment skills throughout your studies, but really focus in on them towards the end when you're going to need them before you go on to find your first job via our agency, which is in your newly qualified nanny year. So in employment weeks, you have a refresher in paediatric first aid. In fact, you get that in your 1st year, but we make sure you have it topped up before you go off into employment. You have the opportunity to work with ex-military intelligence officers to do security and cyber security training. We get lots of jokes about James Bond meeting Mary Poppins, because we also do self-defense classes. But what we really emphasize there is that's about looking after yourself and looking after the children that you're working with. And very similarly, when we take you to the skid pan, you can see that image up there of the car zooming around a skid pan, but that's not about the sort of myth of escaping the paparazzi. What it is actually about is helping you to feel really confident in your first employment about how to handle a car safely, how to know that you are taking optimal care of the young children who will be in your care in your first foray into employment. And then we do also focus in on those professional communications, making sure that you feel very clear about what it means to be able to have any sort of conversation with a family about areas to do with children's development, or perhaps in your environment that you're focused on when you're living in somebody's home as part of their family, working with children. So once you finish your degree and diploma, it's the 2 courses, that intense experience, you go off into your first employment, which we call the Newly Qualified Nanny year. And at that point, you stop paying any fees. But we do make sure we sit alongside you for that year. So we are there to support you while you're refining your skills and making sure that your practice is at the highest quality and really representing the excellence that we know that Norland stands for in terms of education and care for young children. So you get the opportunity to gain confidence and experience by being in a workplace, but you also have that opportunity to tap into our team that sit around you. They come and assess your practice in that final year, and they're there alongside you so that they're continuously assessing your progress before you then go on to complete that newly qualified nanny year and get the coveted Norland diploma, which then means that you are a Norland nanny and off into employment beyond that first year. Some of our students may then come back to take our Masters in Early Childhood Education and Care, which we are very excited about because we've just validated this. And we're in the process at the moment of putting together all of the materials so that students will then be able to come back to Norland and develop a Master's in Education and Care with the opportunity to specialise in these particular areas. There is a focus on birth to 3 practice, as well as making sure that students are really developing the cutting edge understanding of the research around what it means to support behaviour and self-regulation, food and nutrition, or sleep, or home-based pedagogy and care. And we've chosen those areas very particularly because we know that those are the ones that parents want support with their young children, and it offers really an opportunity for further qualification and study so that you can really upskill yourself when you're out there in employment and you've gained that experience, and you might want to then go off and diversify into different careers that Janet will talk to you about a little bit later. This particular Masters is going to be fully online. We hope it will offer some summer skills, but it really is embedded in practice. So it's an applied Masters. We've carefully linked it with employment and entrepreneurship, giving our students the opportunity to make it very relevant to the workplace, so very purposeful assessments. And as I said, we're very excited to be able to hopefully be launching that this next academic year. I'm going to hand over to Janet at this point, who's going to give you that little first taster in some of the neuroscience that we would be typically exploring on the degree.
Yeah, this is just a little 5-minute foray into something that you might, get a glimpse of some of the work that we'll be doing. So we have, you've heard about some of the modules and so on. We do cover the latest research from neuroscience, but it's all done in a very accessible way. And you can see we've already put on the slide a few fun facts that you'll start to learn about. You can see there, for example, that in a baby's brain, 1 million connections are being made every second. I mean, there's a lot happening with the baby, and we now know that 80 to 90% of brain growth is actually happening, as you can see there, before the age of 3. And if you look at the graph, there's a nice visual of, which really illustrates the power and importance of those first few years in terms of how you will literally be shaping their brain. Every interaction you have with them is stimulating something, and obviously supporting their body and their physical development as well, of course. So you'll be learning all sorts of things related to this. On you go, Becky. So another fun fact you'll learn about is what we call the mirroring mechanism. So this is something that was discovered relatively recently, where they realized that when you watch someone else perform an activity, particularly mostly when it's goal-directed activity, your bits of your brain will light up. So if you all just watch me now, I'm going to take a sip of my drink, which is just juice, by the way. It's not wine or anything. Here we go. As you watch me do that, your brains lit up, bits of your brain, particularly the bits that are responsible for physical activity, so known as motor regions of the brain. And your brain literally kind of copied what I did, even though you weren't actually doing it yourselves. Now, we've known for many, many years, there's whole theories about this that you'll learn about, that children see, children do. So we are one of the most powerful ways, not the only way, but one of the most powerful ways we learn is by watching others and learning from what others do. And now we think, well, not we, but the neuroscientists think they've discovered the mechanism called the mirroring mechanism in our brain that enables us to do that. And this is quite important if you're going to work with young children, because those babies might not be able to pick up a drink and take a drink, but their brain is already practicing doing that. And so on. So there's some interesting things around there. And in that picture, you can see with this mirroring capacity is there from birth. In fact, you can make faces at a newborn and they will potentially mirror what you do. And in this picture, you can see my son when he was a baby with my father. And you can see that they're mirroring each other. And that's my nephew in the background, in case you're wondering, who's got jet lag, because we lived in America at the time and he was visiting. So I always have to explain what's going on in the background there. But there you are, lovely example of mirroring. And we think this mirroring sort of lays foundations for all sorts of important things about learning about the world, about how to do things, but also you'll learn about how it plays a role in laying the foundations for empathy. Very important empathy. You'll learn a lot about how empathy develops. It involves about 8 different regions of the brain, by the way. And the interesting thing about empathy is that we develop it by experiencing it for the most part. We're born with a capacity for empathy, but we actually learn empathy by experiencing empathy. And I think given what's going on in the world, we could do with some more empathic brains, could we not? So there you go. So lots of fun facts. So just to finish off this little quick sort of dive into a little bit about our brain. If you can go to the next slide, please, Becky. I think the big message that we tell all our students is that you're not a babysitter. You're so much more than that. You are a brain architect, because you are literally shaping young children's brains and their lives and laying really powerful, important foundations that will affect them for the rest of their life. So fun stuff. So there you go. That's a little quick glance into some of the learning that you'll do at Norland.
Thank you, Janet. So it's back to me for the next couple of slides. And what we wanted to do here is just draw attention to some of the student support that sits alongside the degree and the diploma that you'll take part in when you come to Norland. So just to let you know, really, that we have a comprehensive personal tutoring system. Every student has a personal tutor and they travel through their study with them, and they're there to support them both pastorally and also with excuse me, academic support needs. And then alongside that, we also have a student support service, and they are there to work with the personal tutors and students. We have a really strong emphasis on partnership. So we want every student to feel that they are comprehensively supported, and our student support team are there if students need to reach out for particular needs. And that can be academic support, study skills, for instance, or it might be pastoral support. And a really nice example of the way in which we work in partnership is a sort of joined up approach, where at the ends of our sessions, we make sure that when we get to the end of a cycle of teaching, that the member of the student support team, our library team, and a lecturer are available for students to come and ask questions about what they've been learning about that week. So there are really good opportunities to be able to pick up on support with your studies. And then we also offer a really completely free confidential service so that students can talk with a student support member about their ongoing experience at Norland. And if needed, we can offer counselling sessions for students depending on the need. And then we also make sure that support is offered for particular educational needs and disabilities. So we have reasonable adjustments in place if students need to have that, and that can be accessed via your personal tutor as well as our student support team. And we make sure that we have good support academic skill sessions and special seminars in place. So for an example, when you first start at Norland, we have a high emphasis on study skills, and we talk to you about what it means to study at in higher education and how you develop some of the really important aspects that you'll need for your assessments that will be forthcoming. So that helps to make you feel confident and supported throughout your journey at Norland. And then just to draw attention a little bit to what it's like being a student. So Janet mentioned the uniform right at the beginning of this presentation. And what we wanted to do is just draw attention to the high expectations when you come to Norland. And as we've said a few times, you'll be studying 2 courses. It is a very intense experience. And so we make sure that we offer you a lot of support, but we do have high expectations of you, and we expect you to work with us and to put 100% into your study and your experience so you get the most out of your time at Norland. And alongside that sits our Code of Professional Responsibilities that we've mentioned as well. And that emphasises the qualities you need in order to be reaching those high expectations. And they are, really important qualities for working with children. They have children at the centre, so they might be around trustworthiness, honesty, kindness, about that really important ability to be resilient in your studies as well, because we know that studying 2 courses is a really intense experience. It's hard work, it's very rewarding, but we do want to have students who are working with us and they understand that they're going to face challenges and they're going to need to be able to bounce back from those challenges, and that might be with the support of students, but eventually it will be about you supporting yourself and knowing how to face a challenge, pick yourself up, and then move on to another experience, learning from whatever has happened previously. Then in terms of what sits outside of the curriculum, we do offer our students access to Bath Spa Students' Union. So we're very small and we haven't got those sorts of facilities on campus. So we make sure that you can tap into the societies and sports teams that Bath Spa students are taking part in. And actually our students really enjoy that because it gives them the opportunity to meet other students, not just from one particular institution. And then you can also have your own types of activities and clubs that you might want to bring forward. So we've just had some students put forward an application for a rowing club. We've got a climbing club. They might be sports related, but they can also be charity commitments and hobbies as well. In fact, we've had, you can see there that different clubs recently, such as the rock climbing, yoga, netball, even roller disco. And then we also have a Norland choir, which is a really cherished part of the Norland experience. The choir sing at all of our events, and all of the staff cry at the beautiful singing that happens at the Bath Christmas market, at our graduation, and other events like that. So there are good opportunities for you to embrace a life outside of your studies and make sure you're making the most of being part of a university city in Bath. So I'm going to hand over now to Mira, who's going to tell you a little bit more about her experience as a student.
Hi everyone. My name is Mira. I'm from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, so I'm an international student. I'm actually Norland's first Canadian student. I'm an animal lover. I have cats in Canada, and I grew up with a lot of other animals. And I actually do have a hamster in Bath. I went to a university preparatory school before Norland, so that would have been my equivalent to A levels. And I joined Norland shortly after graduation in 2023. I did have some childcare experience, babysitting, nannying, and then I also worked in some Montessori settings and other nurseries during summers. Could I get the next slide, please? So my experience of the application process was a bit different than students in the UK. Luckily, I had a wonderful school guidance counselor to support me through the process. The first step was converting my grades to the UCAS point system because different countries have different grading systems. I was able to do this really easily online. UCAS has a converter, so you can put in where you're from and your grades, and it'll convert that to UCAS points. I am in a bit of a different situation than other international students that are now coming in, but I did complete a 4-week placement before joining Norland in September because of visa requirements. Claire will talk about that later on, but that shouldn't affect you. I wrote my essay just about personal experience and why I really wanted to come to Norland. And because I was in Canada, I did have an online interview instead of in person. But Norland was super helpful, just answering all my questions and very communicative with my guidance counselor as well. So that made the whole process really easy. Could I get the next slide, please? So my student experience so far has been great. It is quite a small university, so I enjoy that because it's really easy to get to know all the staff and students. And Bath is also quite a small city from what I'm used to because I'm from a massive city. So it was really easy for me to navigate, very welcoming atmosphere. I joined a great church, and I also joined the Royal Commonwealth Society. And also I made friends through different societies that go to the University of Bath. So I think it's a common misconception that like if you're at Norland, you're only going to be able to meet other Norlanders, but that's so far from the truth. And everyone in Black Bath is just super welcoming. I was a bit worried about balancing studies and personal life, but for me, that hasn't really been an issue. It definitely is a lot of dedication and hard work, but if you are passionate about Norland, it's so worth it and it's a great experience. I'm a very visual and practical learner, so I love that Norland has very hands-on experiences through placement and diploma modules. Love sewing and FNN. I think they're super exciting. Could I get the next slide, please? So my biggest worries before joining Norland was that if I was going to be able to do it. It seems super intense and scary, but honestly, I'd say it is the best decision I've ever made. Moving to a new country for me was really scary, especially because Canada isn't the closest. But again, everyone's been so welcoming, so I have barely felt homesick. And I was also really worried about navigating new systems and like different cultural things, but Claire has been super helpful with everything visa related and even traveling and just updating us on everything. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Mira. It's really lovely to listen to your experience so far. Thank you very much for sharing it. I'm going to step in again now and just talk a little bit about accommodation, and let you know that Norland doesn't have its own halls of residence. We're very small, but what we do have is the opportunity for students to live in shared houses and flats across Bath. We work with landlords, and we've established really good relationships with them. So we make sure that you are in accommodation that we've had the opportunity to check, and also that we've got long-standing relationships with landlords. But what living in the city does offer you is it gives you the opportunity to really immerse yourselves in student lives outside of Norland. In fact, students in their first year typically will live with other first years, but as they go into their second and third years, they may choose to live with students from Bath Spa University or Bath University as well, or they might stay together with peers and friends that they've made over their first year of studies. So there are lots of different ways in which you can access accommodation. Once you've been offered a place, we will reach out to you and you can make a request about how that accommodation is going to work for you in that first year. We give you some options, and you work very closely with our accommodation team who are there to guide you through that experience. And just to signpost you now, while you're in your kind of looking phase, that approximate accommodation in Bath for the houses and flats is around the 625 to 850 per calendar month mark, and that's excluding bills. And that we also have two self-contained, partially contained flatlets, and their rent for those is a little bit higher. It's around 720, and they have some additional facilities. So students can explore these types of shared student houses and flats, or we also have the opportunity to offer students a student apartment. We have 47 bedrooms that we've secured. These are all en suite. They're exclusively available to Norland students. We have rent that we've secured around that from between 736 to about 816 per room. That's including internet, but not all the bills, just like the other properties as well. So the accommodations they're arranged into little apartments. You can have 2 or 5 ensuite rooms sharing a bedroom and a kitchen space. So it's a different option that you might want to find out a bit more about if you decide to apply. And as I said, our accommodation team will work closely with you to support you as you secure that first bit of accommodation when you start Norland. But I do need to make the note that occasionally we do have last minute changes happen. They're unlikely, but just in case that event happens, we make sure that the Norland rents are secured, so they will never go above that 1,000 per calendar month for students. And then the last slide for me, before I'm going to hand over to Claire, is just to give you a little bit of a flavour of who our students are, because you might be there listening to us this evening and just, you know, thinking a little bit about whether you're going to fit in and what it might be like to study at Norland and what students' body are actually like. But, you know, we want to reassure you that the students are just like you. They come from all walks of life, all educational, cultural backgrounds. We have a variety of male, female students, and we are all different from each other, just as every family is different. And we really emphasize that because we know that if you're going to work with children, you're going to work with children from right across the globe, from all sorts of different cultural, educational backgrounds, with different varieties of starting points and experiences. And we want our student body to reflect society and also to be able to work with different families, just as importantly is that you feel like when you come here that you're a student who is going to be represented in some way. What our students do have as a shared starting point is this absolute passion for working with children. So they want to put children at the centre of their practice and work with families, and they know that they're committed to a vocational career that's about helping children to grow and develop and learn. And that, as I said earlier, this determination, this resilience to work hard and achieve and work in partnership, and most importantly, having a commitment to our Norland Code of Responsibilities. So really wanting to be a Norland nanny who emulates the qualities of trust and respect and kindness as a student, but also in career as an NQN, and then as you become a Norland nanny later in your career. Okay, so I'm going to pause there and now hand over to Claire.
Hello, good evening. So my name is Claire Hutton, and part of my role at Norland involves looking after our visa students and our visa sponsorship compliance. So I'm just going to share a little bit of information about what you need to know if you are thinking of applying to Norland and you will need a visa to do so. So firstly, you will need to meet all the usual entry requirements that all of our students have to make. So admissions will be your first port of call. Becky will go through that in a little bit more detail in the next slide. But this is just really important to make sure that you're right for Norland and that Norland's right for you. Our admissions team can also check any non-UK qualifications you may have. So as Mira touched upon earlier, if you do have non-UK qualifications and you aren't sure if they will meet the criteria we require, that's hard to say, get in touch with our admissions team and they can always check for you and let you know if that works or not. If English is not your first language though, you will need to provide a CELT, and that's a secure English language test. The test we accept for our purposes is the IELTS for UKVI with an overall band score of 6. So again, if you do find yourself in the position of applying and you're not sure about this, ask me, get in touch with me, and I can make sure you're booking the right test if this is something you need to do as part of your application. Yes, you will also have a dedicated visa manager, that's me, to help you through this process and during your time at Norland. We understand that it's a lot of extra work for you to have to do a visa application, and there are extra conditions you will need to abide by because of that in coming here with a visa. So I'm always here, so reach out and I'm always happy to help you and support you with that. There are unfortunately some additional costs to bear in mind. For example, the student visa application fee, which you can see there, and also the immigration health surcharge. Now, this is a fee you pay that allows you to use the NHS, the National Health Service, in the same way I can in this country when you're here. And you would need to pay this as part of your visa application. Also bear in mind that you have to pay it up front for the entire time that you're here. So that is that's a big cost up front to bear in mind. Yes, and Norland is, as of August this year, excitingly, a student sponsor with a track record of compliance. So what this means is that student visa holders can now work in the UK, take part fully in our placements, and also apply for a graduate visa after you complete your BA, which means you can stay in the UK to do your NQN year. Whereas beforehand, like Mira touched upon, there were restrictions in place on all of these things. So it's a really good time to come to Norland as a visa student at the moment. And well done for Mira for showing the example of strength and adversity and dealing with all of those conditions before coming. I think that's all from me for now, so I'll pass back to Becky.
Thank you so much, Claire. Okay, so just a couple more slides from me. I was going to tell you a little bit more about the detail of applying to Norland. So you do need a minimum of 96 UCAS points, and you do need 5 GCSEs, and they've got to also include English and Maths at grade 4, or if you're like me and know them as grade C or above. And then just as Claire's explained, if you've got English as an additional language, you're going to need to demonstrate that English language competence using the IELTS academic tests. And Claire's given you the detail on that. But just to draw some attention to the application procedure, because I'm sure that if you're looking at the moment, you're in that process of applying. So you do apply through UCAS, and you will have the personal statement with the specific questions laid out for you this academic year. What we're really looking for in the personal statement is some evidence that you've got that passion and commitment to early years that we've been talking about throughout this presentation, that you really are committed to this experience of working with children to become a Norland nanny. And in fact, that we recognise that when students go to apply to universities, they will be applying usually to more than one. And so if you want to tailor a particular statement to Norland, but also make sure that you've got a generic statement out there for other universities, you can send in something additional to us. to really outline your commitment to Norland. And you may want also to gather some evidence for an application. You can bring along things to the interview process, because we do interview all of our students who get through that application process. And what we do is invite you in, and you get the opportunity to bring in some artifacts or perhaps some images or some ways that help you to talk about your experience of working with young children. And then once you've got through that interview process, which we do try our best to put you at ease, and you have an interview one-to-one and you have a group activity as well, we would then go to the offer stage, and then you would work closely with our accommodation team, and they start to support you so that you get the right kind of accommodation for that first year, as I talked about a few slides ago. And then finally from me, just to give you a bit of an insight into this application milestones from Norland's perspective. So we're obviously now at the point where applications are coming in. Most of our students who are prospective students have started that process. You might be working with your college or school to put your application together and really outline your commitment to working with young children for your future career. And then our interviews start around October, November, so we're right into that cycle now, and that gives you the opportunity to come and really demonstrate the best of yourself, show those qualities that we've talked about in terms of resilience and trustworthiness and kindness. And then what happens is we then review all of the interviews and the feedback from our academic team, and we get to January, which is the equal consideration deadline for UCAS. So we make sure that your application is received with equal consideration, you must submit it before that deadline in January. And then once we get through that phase into the new year, we have a bursary deadline, and Rob will be talking to you a little bit later about bursaries. But if you do hold the offer of a place, you will be invited to submit a bursary application by a deadline, and they're means tested, but all our students have the opportunity to apply for a bursary. And then we get around June time, where the UCAS offers response deadline. We're waiting there to see that whether or not you're going to reply to that response around June deadline. Otherwise, what happens is you get into a default or decline by default. So it's really important to remember that June deadline. And then the really all-important August results day, where if you have a conditional offer, we will then reach out if you've got your grades to confirm, or if not, decline your place at Norland. So that's it from me, and I'm going to now hand over to Elena, who's going to give you some more insights from a student perspective. Over to you, Elena.
Hi everyone, so my name's Elena and I am originally from Surrey, and I'm 21. I'm also bilingual, which I think happens to play in my favour a little bit with some nannying jobs. So I speak Dutch fluently and also German. I love going on walks and I enjoy exploring Bath. Bath is such a beautiful city, has lots of shopping. And before I came to Norland, I came straight from college. So I didn't have that many like nannying or babysitting experiences. However, I did do the occasional babysitting job. Next slide, please. Oh.
There we go.
Thank you. No, don't worry. So I am part of the SSLC. So I am privileged enough to be head of students, which is amazing. And one of the things that I really strive for as being head of students is connecting all 3 years together. So I'm in charge of doing some socials. So a lot of you may think that you might not have enough time to still have like a normal uni experience. I put in brackets normal, but the socializing aspect of things, we still go out, we go for a drink and we have some fun. So I've organised some Christmas socials that are coming up. I'm also part of the Norland Choir, which is lovely. Even if you can't sing, I recommend joining the Norland Choir. It's so fun. It's like a little family. I was privileged enough to go to the What Uni Student Choice Awards, which was amazing, and we won for our category. I also attended some Christmas Carol services, which I think is so lovely for your family to come to as well. And the Grenfell Memorial Quilt in the Bath Abbey. Thank you. The next slide, please. So how I fund my studies here at Norland is I have one of Norland's paid roles as being head of students. So that helps a little bit with a little bit of income. Marvelous is also our babysitting app, which is just exclusive for Norland Nannies, and it's amazing. You have so many families around Bath that use it, and that's definitely something that I use quite regularly. I've used the Norland Job Shop before, and I've used it for a wedding, and I absolutely loved it. I did this wedding with another Norland nanny, and it was just a lovely experience because this wedding was for a previous Norland nanny, so it was just full of nannies. I do some nannying during the holidays, which I feel that Norland's timetable works very, very well with, for example, we have half terms, and so do lots of obviously children in school have half terms, so it means that we can have our nannying roles during the half terms, which then help provide income for our studying. I'm very lucky that my parents support me with my fees, and that has been a really big help, as well as regular nanny families that I've gained throughout placement. And I feel like us going through placements helps us also gain other families, and then you build more of a nannying society as well. So having almost like a nannying network, that's what I'd like to call it. Next slide, please. So my biggest worries before joining Norland was making friends. I feel like I wasn't coming from that far away, but I was still worried because I wasn't sure it was a new area. But luckily all the girls that I lived with in first year were so lovely, and I made some friends through like choir, going to the socials. Homesickness was quite a big thing for me. I'm quite a homebody, and I really struggled with not having my family around me. However, it worked out fine. I went to go visit them a few times, and then slowly I just settled in. Academics is quite a big thing for me. So I'm dyslexic, and luckily our student support is absolutely amazing. They're always so welcoming. I go up there with so many questions, and I always feel so much better with my work, and they're just so friendly. And then budgeting and managing money was definitely a big worry for me as well, because I hadn't had the experience of living by myself. So this is something that I'm absolutely fine with after my 3 years. So it's just another skill that I've learnt. And some of these pictures are from the socials that I've organised as well. So we have our pub golf social that's just new, that happened like 3 weeks ago, and that was lovely. And I just love the fact that we can mix all three sets for these socials, and then you get to meet other students, and it's lovely. And then the bottom pictures are from me and my housemates that we've climbed Penny Fan, and then we have a little Christmas pajama party as well. So it's really lovely. Next slide, please. Some advice that I'd give prospective students is definitely be yourself, especially in the interview. I feel like you can feel so nervous and wrapped up in trying to be this perfect person that really we just want to see you and how much you love children. And so that's always a bit of advice that I give. And say yes. Get stuck into things. You're trying things that you've never tried before, and don't be afraid to ask for help. I think this was a big one for me, as I wasn't sure whether if I had a question, it would be almost like I didn't want to ask it. I didn't want to ask for help, but however, everyone's so welcoming, and definitely get involved as well and take care of yourself. I feel that uni is so busy, and you need to make sure that you're still resting and do things that make you happy, because you're moving away from home for most of you. And enjoy it. Time goes so quickly, and I can't believe that I'm already in my third year. So yeah, take every opportunity. Thank you. Next slide. And then we have our TAP, which is our online app where you can speak to students. This is amazing because you hear firsthand from your students when you ask questions. And this is definitely something that I recommend all prospective students doing. And it's so lovely. Everyone's always willing and welcoming to talk to you. So thank you so much.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Rob Cole. I'm the Chief Finance Officer at Norland, and I've got 4 slides just to go through with you on fees and finance, a bit on instalments and student finance, the Emily Ward Bursary, and a bit on Earn While You Learn, which actually Elena's gone through a fair bit of that in her presentation. So the first slide we've got here is the breakdown of fees for September 26 for the 26-27 year. The UK fees are listed with the international fees in brackets. What I'd say with those fees, it's very much an investment for your future, and particularly in terms of career opportunities and going forward, which I know Janet will talk more about after my set of slides that I'm presenting here for you. As a college and finance team, we work with students and parents and guarantors in terms of the termly amounts and how they are invoiced either monthly or termly. And on experience, we have a mixture of those arrangements for the year. Some even pay all up front in the first couple of months when they start. We do look at fees, and our directors look at fees in terms of for future years, and there's a little bit of detail there about inflation, which affects us all, unfortunately, but we have to consider our future fees going forward into September 27 and beyond. And being a 4 years, there's no tuition fees in the 4th year, which is a newly qualified year. That is salaried. So during that year, students would be earning during their newly qualified year, and that's a real benefit for the courses that we offer. A little bit of detail at the bottom of the slide, some additional studying costs for the uniform, the DBS check that has to take place because we're obviously working with little people, sewing kit and materials, and we've also got the PAN, the Professional Association of Norlanders, which is free membership during your time as a student and NQN at Norland. Next slide, please. So a little bit more breakdown on the termly amounts. We as Norland are not a fee cap provider, so the student loan company can support UK students with a figure of 6,355. So that would be taken off your total tuition fee for each year. It's usually means tested. There's obviously the maintenance loan, which I understand at the moment can be as high as about £13,000. But again, there's a process to follow with student finance, because there will be varying degrees of that maintenance loan depending on personal circumstances, and to apply by the end of February, and that really would help with your application going forward. As noted here, obviously international students are unable to access UK student finance, and those fees as listed on the table there at 21,014. As a finance team, we work very closely with our students and guarantors. So we do have a number of students that from time to time will come into the finance office, and we will just talk through termly amounts and or budgeting as well, which is a real helpful process, as Elena's alluded to in her previous slides, about how the sort of the balance between studying and part-time work, and there's other opportunities with the job shop and the like, can benefit as you go forward. Next slide, please. So the Emily Ward Bursary, and this information is also on our website. In the last 5 years, we've awarded bursaries of just over 1.2 million. At the end of the 24-25 academic year that's just completed, we awarded just over £290,000, and we're expecting a similar award for this year that we are now in, which is 25-26. You can see here a range of bursaries. They range from 2,000 to 10,000, and typically about a quarter of students in each cohort, in each year group, receive a bursary. We have a policy in place that we're just finalising, and just to inform also, it is means tested in the sense that we'll look at a number of widening participation criteria, which are very much government-led in terms of deprivation, but also looking at household income, where typically if household income is over £40,000, it is not likely that the bursary would be awarded unless it's in exceptional circumstances. The bursary application would normally go out at the start of April, and we're moving to an online form, and that'll go through via our admissions team, and that'll ask for a number of information and details aligned to the policy. And as noted on the slide here, the deadline for the bursary application will be the 10th of April 2026. Next slide, please. So this slide, as I've mentioned already, Elena's mentioned a number of examples through Student Job Shop, Marvellous Babysitting. We have a number of student groups. I lead on the Sustainability Green Group, and we just recruited 3 students earlier this month who are going to sit on our sustainability working group. So there's some paid roles within part-time roles, not full-time roles, at Norland. And we undertake an annual survey with our students to look at the varying levels of work during term time and holidays, with some details there for you. And that does give a real boost to the support for cost of living whilst you're here at Norland. Thank you.
Okay, it's me now to cheer you up after the news. I know there's been some questions about finances in the Q&A box, but which we've started to answer. But any questions we don't get to, as I said, we'll do at the end. But it is important. I put this in a response to one query, actually. So just in case no one has seen that, Norland is a not-for-profit organisation. We are owned by a charity. So lots of people think we charge a lot of money because we're private. That's not why. We charge more because you do 2 courses. That's the only reason. And as you will have seen, a lot of those courses, particularly the diploma, is resource heavy, and so on. So we have to have a special block with stoves and so on and so forth. Then there's all the kind of practical stuff that you need to learn about bathing a baby, making up bottles, etc., etc. So because it's resource heavy, and we have that wonderful value added curriculum with all the additional employment training, we get that whole kind of the military intelligence officers coming in and those sorts of things that you've heard about, the baby massage classes, the skid pan that you've heard about, and that kind of thing. So that all, unfortunately, are additional costs. And so that's why we charge what we charge. We don't make any profit from it. And in fact, the course is subsidized by commercial activity that we undertake, including our employment agency. So the Norland agency, we get fees from placing Norlanders. You don't pay anything, but once you've graduated and qualified, we can place you in a job, and the family pays a placement fee for that. We use that money for the bursaries and also to subsidize the course. So we know we're expensive, but it is an investment, and the return on the investment is very strong. And I'll talk a little bit more to that. So this is the average salary, and these are real figures. We're not allowed to give you any information that isn't true. And we know this directly because we've got our own employment agency. So this is the average salary a year after qualifying that our agency shows one of our graduates can earn. Sometimes it's lower than that because you might have a job that's live out and it might be outside London. So if it's in London, for example, It's usually a higher salary if it's in America or the Middle East or China. Internationally, it's usually higher as well. If you're living in, if you're living out, the salary is usually higher. If you're living in, the salary does drop a little bit because, of course, you're not having to pay rent. But that's nearly £50,000 a year after graduating. That is way above the national average salary for anyone, by the way. So if I could just have the next slide, I'll just elaborate a little bit more. We think it's useful to compare the salaries of other professions. And this data is a little bit out of date, actually, because this information only comes through from the government every few years. So this is the most recent salaries from 2023. They're probably a little bit higher than this now. But you can see even doctors and dentists, after 5 years of graduating, aren't earning as much as a Norland nanny. And by the way, that average salary is actually more like 80,000 now. If we're taking a 2025 average, they have gone up quite a lot in the last few years. So just ponder on this. If you're going to be a doctor, you're going to spend the 5 years of study. So that if you're borrowing a student, getting a student loan for about 9k a year for that, that's nearly £50,000, right? So you're already in debt for 50k and you still haven't qualified. So we think that this is an important point to note, that people are willing to sort of invest in and borrow money and whatnot to become a doctor, and yet they still won't end up being as well paid often as a Norland nanny. So if we go to the next slide, we think this is an interesting slide. There's a lot of information on here, but this again, these are all figures from our employment agency, where we have placed jobs with our own graduates who are qualified Norland nannies. You'll see it will vary regionally, internationally, etc., etc. So you can see here down at the bottom, just to really cheer you up, that within 8 to 10 years, we have got jobs right now for 130,000 plus a year. Some people never ever earn that in a lifetime, never earn that much money. So you could be within 8 to 10 years earning 130,000 plus salary in LA or New York. In fact, just in New York alone, we could place all our third year students, if they were able to work in America, because of course there's some visa restrictions, although we do work with an organization around that. But if we had all our current third years could all get a job just in New York right now, our average number of jobs just in our agency per Norlander seeking a job is 5 to 1. So right now we've got about 5 jobs that we could fill with Norlanders, but we've only got on average 1 Norlander. We've got more than 1 Norlander looking, but I'm just talking about ratios here, looking for a job, because we have 100% employability. That's a very important message. And I say it from personal experience. My son did a 4-year degree with a year abroad at UCL in London, where his rent, by the way, was £1,200 a month, just for a hovel of a room in London. And he spent 4 years because he did a 4-year course with a year abroad. His student debt has come to about 60,000. Has he got a job? No. So there you are. All that debt, all that money, with nothing at the end of it necessarily. So I think that's a very important message to bear in mind. Whilst we do charge a lot and we recognize it's a challenge to find that money, and we have talked a little bit about how that can be mitigated. For example, some of our students, they defer for a year and save up the money that way. And I know that there's some questions that we'll come to about the student job shop, average earnings, that kind of thing. We have the babysitting app that's been mentioned. One thing there's the bursaries, but remember, only about 1 in 4 get a bursary, and they won't all get the full bursary either. However, we know that there are jobs out there in the holidays. So some students earn on average about £200 to £300 a month doing extra babysitting jobs, that kind of thing. Of course, it all depends on how much you want to work, but do bear in mind it's an intense course. There's 2 courses. You can't, for example, go and get a full-time job and just rock up to the occasional lecture. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that at Norland. We try and give you some free time if we can on a Friday, but because it's such an intense course, we sometimes have to have sessions on a Friday as well. You also have got, we do give you enough time and balance to, have a life, have some fun. You can keep up with the workload. It is feasible, and you can get some part-time work. So the best time is during the holidays. We have our own student job shop. We can't fill them all, so they don't all get filled. But I know that some students have averaged in 4 to 6 weeks in the summer. Some students have earned £1,000. I know one student who earned £4,000 in 6 weeks doing a job. So you can also get some decent earnings in the holidays as well to sort of help top things up. But we know it's a challenge, but I hope you can see that if you can find appropriate sources and save and find a way, and I know I've had letters from parents saying we remortgaged our home so our daughter could afford to come here, and it was worth every penny. So there are different ways people do this, but the return on your investment is strong. Because we're not allowed to tell you any information that isn't real. We're not guaranteeing you a job for 130k, by the way, but we have heard of some nannies. This is something I just heard. This is anecdotal, by the way, of some nannies in Silicon Valley earning $250,000, which I think, and I'm sure if we've got any Americans here will correct me, I think it's about 200k a year. Have I got that right? Anyway, it's about $250,000 a year they're earning. It's extraordinary. So yeah, look, you're not going to walk into a 200k job as soon as you've graduated. Let's be realistic here, but it is extraordinary. Anyway, next slide. I think we've hopefully cheered you up enough with that. And I think the other final point we really want to make is you don't have to stay being a nanny. You can go on to do many other things. I know there's been a question about maternity practitioner. We do offer that course, but only after you've graduated, unfortunately. These are all just examples of other things that Norlanders are doing. We have a whole optional module on entrepreneurship because a lot of our graduates go on to set up their own business. We've got a baby clothing company going, a baby food company. Some set up their own nurseries. Some set up, become consultants, so you can become a specialist with our master's program. You can become a sleep specialist, for example. And some people are earning $2,000 a day as a sleep specialist. So there's lots of other opportunities. You don't have to stay being a nanny, and you could go on. You've got a degree. You can go on. Some go on to become a teacher, do a PGCE, and then we get them coming back in their 70s. Still wanting to work, but not wanting to work full time, and you can earn about £300 to £400 a day looking after newborns, for example, in your 70s. We've got some Norlanders in their 70s who just love being with babies, don't want a big full-time job, but do some part-time work. So, job for life in every way. So there we go. That's most of what we want to say, I think. I'm just leaving you before we move on to questions and a little bit of finishing off from our marketing team. With the 2 mottos that were literally introduced by our founder, Emily Ward, in 1892. And we feel 133 years later is still just as relevant, if not more so, as it was then. And that is definitely what our course promotes, that whole idea of providing that loving, nurturing, stimulating, supportive, scaffolded, optimal environment for a young child. And at the same time, you will help to support them to become resilient and to cope with life's adversities. And that is certainly the true of the kind of provision that we try to provide for you as a student. Nurturing, but challenging, and then equipping you to become the very best you can be. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Janet. Thank you, everybody. And we have questions. We've been answering questions as we've been going through. So that's been wonderful. We've had quite a lot of questions, which has been brilliant. So I hope we've been able to answer those. All the information that you need is going to be on our website anyway, but we do have some questions. We've got a little bit of time left, if that's okay. And I'm going to just run through ones that we've got. Actually, Janet, you're just about to answer the one I was going to ask. So about the full university status. Yeah, I think that's a really important question. So when we do get full university status, fingers crossed, hopefully, we'll become a fee cap provider. Would that kind of elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, so unfortunately, because we charge more than the £9,000, we go into what's called the approved category. What that means is the government only lets our students access the £6,000 or so. We think it's outrageous, we think it's unfair, we think it inhibits social mobility. We go marching off to Parliament, we go marching off to the DFE, and we say to them, look, we're committed to widening participation. Why can't our students get the 9K? The only reason why we charge more than 9K is because we're resource heavy and we're doing 2 courses. We argue this point over and over and over. We don't know if they're ever going to revise those categories, but at the moment, we don't qualify. And even when we become a university, because we charge more than the 9K, we won't qualify either, at least under the current regulations. But we are campaigning as much as possible because we think it's crazy that you guys will only be able to access a 6K plus instead of a 9K plus loan. It's very frustrating. So sorry, not at the moment. Doesn't look likely, but we're trying to change things.
Thank you very
Write
much.
to your MP tonight.
Bang the drum.
Send them a letter saying this is ridiculous. Why can't I? We also think that because we're TEF Gold and we're not for profit, that we shouldn't be penalised because we're resource heavy. Anyway, that's that one. End of
Brilliant.
my.
Thank you very much for that, Janet. We've got some questions coming in about obviously outside of Norland qualifications, but I just want to focus back on, because there's quite a few specific ones that are probably more suitable for admissions to answer more than anything else. So we've got a couple of questions. I'm not sure who to ask these to, so I'm going to ask Becky, if that's okay, about the actual course itself. So we've got a question about learning additional languages. We've got a question about driving licenses. How essential are they to be a Norland nanny or a Norland student? Would you be able to answer those questions, Becky?
Yes, certainly. So the first one around additional languages. Well, in terms of the actual curriculum, we have equality, diversity and inclusion, which explores kind of special educational needs and disabilities, and also all aspects of inclusion, such as bilingualism and multilingualism and so forth. So you will kind of learn about it, but actually the practice of learning another language, that would be something that perhaps you could form a self-organized society or group to develop the skills in. So we don't particularly teach another language, but if you want to put a proposal together, or you have like-minded students, that's certainly something that you can explore. And then, Kate, can you just remind me of the second
About
one?
the driving license, is that essential to be a Norland student and then a Norland nanny? Do families look for that?
Yeah, great question. So the driving license isn't essential at all to be a student, and in fact we discourage students from bringing a car to Bath because there's absolutely nowhere to park, and it is a real challenge getting around in Bath. There's lots of residential parking permit areas, which means that it can be difficult to leave your car. So we also make sure that placements give the opportunity to get there by public transport. That said, some students do have a driving license and do bring a car. So certainly not essential when you're a student, and not necessarily essential when you go first into employment, but it might limit the scope of employment that you can undertake. So, obviously, if you're based in somewhere like London, it's very easy to take children who are in your charge into using public transport, but it would be an advantage, I would suggest, in the long run.
Fabulous, thank you very much. I have a couple of questions actually for the two students, if that's okay. I've had some questions coming through about what kind of pre-coming to Norland, what type of experience did you gain, kind of top tips really for because obviously they want to include those things on their personal statements. Are there any kind of guidance and advice that you can give to potential students about what to do before they come to Norland? That would be really helpful.
Like I mentioned, I had a few babysitting jobs that I then, for example, if you're thinking about for your portfolio or to bring to an interview, I had like pictures taken, activities. I wrote up a bit about why I've done this activity with this child. And then maybe if you're like working in part-time, maybe for like after school care or doing like a nursery run or drop off, that might be a good thing. Mira, if you've got anything else.
Not really, no. I mean, again, like my experience was different, being from Canada. I think I've done the same things, babysitting, nannying, school runs. I focused on using my summer breaks to get experience with settings and nannying. I don't know if it's a requirement in the UK, but in high school in Canada, you have to do a minimum of 40 volunteer hours. So I was able to do my volunteer hours at a local setting as well.
Oh, that's really interesting. Thank you very much for that. Janet, I'm going to ask you, you've got quite a lot of questions about actually as a Norland nanny. So there's a couple that have come through. So we've got, on average, how many children is a Norland nanny responsible for? And does a Norland nanny stay with family day, night, and weekend? So I think it's probably a bit of a conversation about the type of different Norland nanny positions. And then, I think that's kind of
Yeah.
elaborate on that. Would you be able to do that for me?
Absolutely. So on average, it's the average is probably 2. Sometimes it's just 1, sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's more. But probably the average is 2. Mostly under 3s. I think I've kind of also responded to another question about that. There are all sorts of options out there in terms of living arrangements and how many hours you work. That will also vary. The average is between 45 and 60 hours a week. Certainly to do your NQN year, I think it's a minimum of 45. So the hours can be a little bit longer, but remember you are getting paid a lot more money as well. But how much additional, you will still have a contract. We help you and support you. In fact, we provide a template contract for the clients to use, particularly in your newly qualified nanny year. And we do cover contracts and finance and pensions and tax and up to a point as well as part of the course. But for example, you would be negotiating with the family the hours, which days you're not necessarily working 24/7. Some families have rota nannies, so you might it's been known for a family to have 3 nannies per child. That's quite unusual though. We're talking about ultra high net worth families here, where that you'll do a sort of 7-hour shift and so on, because some families, the nature of their work and travel and so on, they need sort of constant support, but that doesn't mean you're doing work 24/7 and so on. So you have got employment rights and so on, and we do give this template contract as well, but that all gets negotiated with the family. So you wouldn't necessarily be working all weekend. You might occasionally do additional babysitting, but again, that gets negotiated. So I hope that answers those questions.
Thank you very much, Janet. Do have a look on our website. We've done a whole Norland Unwrapped session all about the agency and the different types of jobs that nannies do as well. We've done a life as a Norland nanny where you actually hear from Norland nannies as well, talk about all the different jobs that they've had. So do find that on our website. There's lots more information about that. I'm going to ask a question for Becky. I've had one regarding in a few years, you'd like to top up your qualification with a teaching or nursing qualification. Will I need to do another 3 to 4 year degree, or would it be shorter? Is there a pathway to that qualification, or is it something that they need to do an extra course, etc.?
Okay, thank you. That's another great question. Well, certainly if you want to go on after your degree and do a teaching qualification, typically you would need to invest another year in study. So you would apply for a postgraduate certificate in education, which is known as a PGCE, and then go into, you can specialise in early childhood. In fact, that's what I did, a PGCE in early years back in the day, and then that gives you qualified teacher status, and you can go on and teach in schools in that age phase. But you don't necessarily always have to focus in the early years. Right across the primary age phase, with a degree in early years, you would be able to go on to have a teaching qualification. In terms of nursing or midwifery and medical degree, I think that one is probably a little bit more comprehensive, and it isn't a sort of top up in the same way that gaining a teaching qualification is. And I think you'd have to actually look into that, and it would be more of a time commitment beyond a year. But the specific detail around that, I'm afraid I can't give you. But I do know that a number of our students do go on to gain a PGCE qualification and go into teaching in their careers after having spent some time as a Norland Nanny.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Becky. I think this might be for Rob. It might be for you. I'm not sure really, but I'm gonna hold out there. If I already have a DBS, do I need to get another one when I start at Norland if I apply?
I can probably answer that one.
Thank you, Rob.
I think if you're on the DBS update service, you can use that as a facility to update and change of employers. But I think, from my experience, where I've worked in different education settings, normally you'd need a new DBS to then be able to be up to date. So yes, I say the answer to that question is update. If you're on the update service, there's your facility to keep the update. Otherwise, you'd have to apply for a new DBS.
Thank you very much. This is a question about the Norland Job Shop, just really what the average hourly salary is on the Norland Job Shop, and how easy it is to get a job on the Norland Job Shop. I think the students have touched on that quite a lot today, but it might be something just to reiterate that there are plenty of jobs available if they choose to take those on. Either Janet or the students, I don't mind which one would be able to answer that.
Well, I think it's quite nice to hear from the students. I've talked a bit about the job shops.
So students,
do either of our students here use the job shop?
Yes. So I've used the job shop multiple times, and I think that it's really lovely because you can pick and choose which job suits you. So I'm always keeping my eye open for new jobs coming through. The jobs that are on there are either more permanent, like jobs that in between your college hours. So it could be morning drop-offs, evening pickups, or regular weekends in London. And then there's the odd wedding, or especially around the holidays, definitely a longer period of time, like the Christmas holidays. So yeah, I think job shop is a very good place to look for if you want, because I don't have like a permanent job outside of Norland to go alongside it. So I definitely like looking at job shop because it gives me that flexibility. So yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. Really appreciate it. We are slowly running out of time, but I think I've got one question I want to ask Becky, if that's okay. And it's really, we got a couple of questions about the degree and how it's taught, about grades and assessment and things like that. Would you maybe just touch on that a little bit of how the degree is taught and what's assessed, etc.?
Yes, certainly. So typically students will have their degree lectures over 2 days a week, and you will be in small groups in a sort of seminar style room, so about sort of 25 to sometimes up to 27 students working together. And you'll be working with a specialist lecturer, and they will be delivering the kind of module and talking you through the kind of content around the degree, and at the same time supporting your preparation for assessment. So all of the content's very carefully mapped into the assessment. And then in terms of assessment, you will be typically doing a wide variety. So we feel it's really important to give students lots of different different opportunities to demonstrate their knowledge that they're gaining and their understanding about a module. So you might do an essay, but it might equally be a presentation, it might be a podcast, it might be a vlog or a blog, it could be a professional discussion, it could be very kind of practice-based as well. And in fact, we've been very excited this year to be exploring something called optionality in assessment and giving our students in the first year the opportunity to try what it means to be able to choose the way in which you demonstrate your knowledge about something depending on your strength. So it's a real strengths-based approach that we adopt. We try to make the assessment very inclusive and, as I said, varied, so students have ample different ways of demonstrating their knowledge. Then the other 2 days of the week, you're doing all your practice-based modules, and all of the assessments there are practical. So there are occasionally little written elements, but they're very carefully linked into employments as a real purpose for the assessment. And the practice-based assessments give you the opportunity to demonstrate your knowledge and really show that you've got that skill and you know how to do it alongside the module based on the knowledge. So as I said, it's a real hands-on and minds-on approach to learning.
Thank you very much, Becky. I've got one more question left, Janet. I'm going to give this to you if that's okay. And it's back to obviously working with family. So I think this is actually a genuine question. If you have a clash with the family you're working with, what's the best process? Will it be easy to change families? All about conflict resolution, relationship management. I think that's a really valid question.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, really interesting one, because often when you're a nanny, if you're going to be living in, especially, your employer is also your landlord. So it, you know, it can be more complex. But we cover all this, don't we, guys, in the course? We look at conflict resolution, having difficult conversations, relationship management. Again, that's another unique aspect to our course. So we try to help prepare you and support you to have that conversation with your employer, you know, that, you know, the heating doesn't work properly in your room or something like that. But if things are not working out, you know, that's, you know, because you're employed on an employment contract, it's the usual kind of discussion that you would have with any employer, in terms of, you know, sort of saying, look, you know, I'm finding this difficult for these reasons. And if you're unable to reach a conclusion, then you would perhaps, you can serve your notice. Obviously, we try and encourage you to resolve matters, because, you know, that's what we would be encouraging children to do, for example, to sort of, you know, try to resolve and negotiate and find a helpful, positive way forward. But, you know, if you're in a very, you know, a very difficult situation, then, you know, you would just serve your notice or negotiate yourself out of the contract as you would with any employer. I hope that answers that one. I mean, it is worth just mentioning, by the way, because we have run out of time. If we haven't answered your question, and apologies if we haven't, we have been trying to answer them as much as possible. Please do just email admissions and we can answer them that way. And they can check the relevant information if needed. So apologies if we haven't answered your question this evening, but some really good questions there. So thank you all very much.
Yes, thank you very much, Janet. And that's it. That really is all we've got time for. Can I have the next slide, please, Becky, so I can just direct and signpost people to some exciting things that are coming up. So like I said, this session is recorded, so you can watch it afterwards. And as Janet said, if you're unsure or have any queries, do contact the admissions team and they will be able to help you and answer those queries for you. So our next up and coming sessions are another episode of our Norland Unwrapped online session. That's going to be all about placements, which is really exciting. That's on the 11th of February. So we'll be having students and staff talk about the placements, which is obviously a big part of the course. We highly recommend, if you are interested in finding out more, to come along to an open day. An on-site at campus open day is a fantastic way to find out more about Norland. You can meet staff and students, also have tea and cake and lovely things in the food and nutrition block as well. And that is a really fantastic day. And you can obviously have some time in Bath. And that's on the 16th of May. That's the Eurovision Song Contest final, just in case you didn't know. And there's loads more information on our website. So please join us. Join us on our mailing list. Everything is recorded, our previous sessions. So you can obviously request a prospectus, but you can can also watch those sessions as well. So I'm just going to say a huge thank you to all the members of staff and especially our students for giving up their time this evening. We hope you've really enjoyed the session, and we hope we will see you again in the not too distant future at Norland. Thank you very much for your time. Bye bye.
Bye everyone. Thank you. Maybe see you here one day. Bye bye.